We are just in the earliest stages of defining the vegan movement now in the year 2024. What a shocking and strange suggestion. Veganism is not about animal suffering. Veganism is not about minimizing animal suffering, much less eliminating animal suffering. Veganism is not, in principle, about making a choice between two options as to which one will entail less animal suffering. Let me tell you a short story that happens to be true. I knew a vegan activist. I knew someone right here on YouTube who's more famous than I was. She was a reasonably good-looking woman and got more attention than I did, understandably, as a leader in the vegan movement here. And she showed up at an event wearing leather boots. Now, I happen to know, as a matter of fact, that these were cow leather boots. She did put photographs of herself on the internet. As I recall, no videos. Maybe there were videos also, I forget. And I knew someone who was at the same event and spoke to her face to face and even touched the boots in question. It was like, really? You showed up, really? And these, I don't know if I can quite say they were thigh-high leather boots, but they were ostentatious, eye-catching leather boots. What if she told you? So now we're moving from a real-world example into something hypothetical, theoretical. What if she told you, don't worry, the leather these boots are made of were taken from an animal that died of natural causes in the wild? Like, there's a plot of forest. In a country like Canada, this is possible. There's a huge forest. This animal lived its whole life without ever coming into contact with a human being once. It wasn't fed by a human being. It wasn't raised in captivity. It never went to a slaughterhouse. Whatever suffering this animal endured was just due to disease, the climate, and other animals competing with it in nature, et cetera, et cetera. This animal got to live the idealized best case scenario life in the wild. And then once it died, human beings went out and removed its skin and produced this suffering-free leather. You see that? From a utilitarian perspective, and utilitarianism has been ludicrously influential within the vegan movement over the past 10, 20, 30 years. Okay. So from a utilitarian perspective, it's as if this isn't leather at all. It's as if this isn't contrary to the principles of veganism at all. So you see, it's subtle enough that you could miss it. What we are opposed to, right? What is that defines veganism? Philosophically, theoretically, but even pragmatically, even in real world situations we're going to live through. It's actually not about minimizing animal suffering. So what is it about? It's about the question of what it means to be a civilized person. The concept of a civilizing mission. It is dripping with the half-remembered, half-forgotten historical implications of the conquest and enslavement of the indigenous people of the New World. And you may not know this, the civilizing mission discourse wasn't just used to justify, explain, and write the history of Europeans conquering Canada, the United States, Brazil, Colombia, etc. Not just. It was revived, even though by this point it was really quite an old discourse. It was revived to justify Europeans conquering Cambodia, getting involved in Laos, getting involved in Myanmar and Southeast Asia, right? This is really centuries later. Like 1492 was a long time ago, guys. Okay. A civilizing mission. Okay, so on the one hand, we have to deal with the odious implications, the odious cultural associations that comes with this concept. On the other hand, we have to address openly the idea of what it means to be civilized is not just something that changes from one century to the next. It's not just something that changes from one generation to the next. And it's not just something that changes from one continent to the next, right? Okay. Today, the idea of what it means to be a civilized person in Israel is fundamentally different from all of the adjacent Muslim nation states surrounding it. Okay? The idea of what it means to be civilized in Syria, in Damascus, is very different from the idea of what it means to be civilized in Jerusalem, in Israel. Okay? And in case you didn't know, if you actually read the Bible, if you actually read the Quran, the difference can't be reduced very easily to doctrinal matters. Okay? It doesn't really come out of the difference between the Torah and the poetry of Muhammad the Prophet, however you want to put this. All right? Okay. The idea of what it means to be a civilized person differs between me and my half-brother Adam. Me and my own brother do not agree on what it means to be a civilized person. Okay? What it means to be civilized is something you, as an individual, assert. It's something you create, you argue for, you fight for, even within your own family. And within the limited sort of free time and money you have in your life. And you may not have questioned it, but all the time you're making decisions on the basis of what is civilized, what is uncivilized, what is fit for a human being, and what is unfit for a human being to do. I'm just being real. Aside from myself, I have never heard anyone else articulate this in the vegan movement. Okay? I never have. It's possible. I mean, I haven't read every book. I haven't seen every YouTube video. Okay. When I first got involved with veganism, there was a massive pro-roadkill discourse. I kid you not. Oh, this goes way back. This was even true when I was vegetarian. I was strictly vegetarian before becoming vegan. Not worth getting into that. But like most people, I had a period of my diet was like 95% vegan, but it wasn't 100% vegan. I still had Parmesan cheese on pasta during that period, for example. But anyway, but I refused to buy leather. I refused to buy or eat eggs. I didn't drink milk. It was really being a lazy vegan. But anyway, I did have a vegetarian period. Even back then, you had this discourse that, roadkill is going to happen anyway, right? Like, every day, and people know this, so many thousand deer are killed on the highways of the United States of America, so many thousand rabbits, whatever. And they argue, why should that go to waste, right? This is utilitarianism, right? And utilitarianism, this is not a footnote. A major chapter in the history of the vegan movement was the period of time in which people could not tell the difference between utilitarianism and veganism. And that chapter of history is coming to an end now. Utilitarianism is the opposite of veganism. It's radically, fundamentally incompatible with veganism. But everyone in this audience, we all lived through a period of time in which vegans themselves couldn't tell the difference. So it was, when I first got involved in veganism and even vegetarianism, there were all these people saying, oh, well, an animal that lives its life in the forest, carefree, frolicking in the fields, and in no way exploited by human beings. It may never even meet or see a human being. It's not being fed. It's not being fed by human beings. It's not being kept in captivity. There is no slaughterhouse. And then one day, by happenstance, this animal is hit by a car and killed. So they ask, from their perspective, why not go and have a human being take a knife and slit down the length of the legs and slit along the belly and pull out the digestive organs and have their hands covered with that blood, have the stench of the animal fat and the hormones sink into your body, and pull back the skin from the corpse, and then hang the skin on the wall, and then shine a special light through the skin and take a knife and remove the little bits of fat from it. Why not have a whole industry devoted to taking that animal's corpse and the corpses of all those animals and converting their skin into a product for human use, for human enjoyment? Because from a utilitarian perspective, there's no harm. There's no suffering. There certainly isn't extra suffering inflicted upon the animal while it was alive, in addition to the suffering it endured by being hit accidentally by a car as it tried to cross the road. Okay? Now look, most of the people in this audience, you do have an answer to this question. At some point, you've been asked some kind of question like this, whether it's by other vegans or by anti-vegan people or people who hate you within your family. But I am betting your answer is a lot more incoherent and a lot less honest than the answer I'm providing you with in this video. Okay? The truth is, we are in the midst of a struggle to redefine civilization, to redefine what it means to be a civilized person, to be a civilized man. And we're not winning. We're losing that fight. This is one of the reasons why incredibly few vegans are willing to define what veganism is all about in this way. If they define it in terms of making a choice between two alternatives as to which one will minimize animal suffering, then you can celebrate the invention of gas chambers for pigs as a victory for the vegan movement, right? Then you can celebrate all the little incremental welfarist steps along the way that have made the meat and dairy industry more efficient, right? As a win for the vegan movement, right? You see victory everywhere when you're a welfarist, and you see the lesser of two evils everywhere being opted for if you're a utilitarian. And the joy and happiness of the people who live with that delusion, right, is that they think human nature is good, because the average person, if they have enough money at the grocery store and they have to choose between free-range chicken and factory farm chicken, will choose free-range chicken. Footnote, it is a proven scientific fact, it is a quantitative fact, that free-range chicken causes more harm, more suffering to more animals, including simply the death of more animals, than battery cage raising of chickens. Actually, as a quantitative fact, and interesting footnote, but of course they as consumers don't perceive this way. They think they're doing something good and virtuous and noble. I happened to see this hour-long discussion, maybe hour and 30-minute long discussion, between David C. Arenas and Lucy Munson. Let's get the name right here. You've got the link in the description. You can click on their names. It'll take you over to Lucy's channel. Lucy's channel is where this conversation is, not on David's channel. And for the first time in more than 10 years of rolling heavy with the vegan movement, I feel like, wow, we have finally moved on from this chapter where veganism was dominated by utilitarianism and the struggle against utilitarianism. For the first time, I feel like I'm looking at two vegans talking to each other who are starting at the next level. So Lucy Munson, she's still fairly new to vegan activism. She said this about herself, like she's still learning, she's still figuring it out. But she is starting at such a huge advantage compared to the people who were starting 5 years ago and 10 years ago, because I feel like she is starting already after the end of this epoch. She is starting after, for example, Peter Singer has been discredited. She's starting after all of the utilitarian assumptions that were built into and absorbed the movement have started to be questioned, have started to be rejected in favor of something better. And obviously, David Arenas, that's a large percentage of what he talks about. It's not the whole podcast, but like at least 20% or 30% is him talking about utilitarianism and the challenge to overthrow utilitarianism. And I'd have to reflect, when in my life, have I even once before heard another vegan who was in the sense on the same page as me? And I don't think his work has influenced my mind. I don't think it's because he's been a fan of my YouTube channel for years. And look, let's be real. I do have fans. There are people who fans. I can't remember any of them making a YouTube video with this argument. I could name names. But no, so I just say, even the people who are influenced by my channel, I haven't heard this element of it examined and taken forward. All right. Okay. What does it mean to be opposed to wearing leather, even if the leather comes from a wild animal that wasn't suffering at human hands, wasn't kept in captivity, etc.? What does it mean to be opposed to wearing leather, to be opposed to another human being having their profession being the production of leather, even if it is a wild animal that dies of natural causes or is hit by roadkill? Okay? The very clear, very simple, very honest answer is, I do not think this is suitable for a human being. I think you are better than this. Okay. Very separate question here that can be illustrated rapidly with a somewhat disgusting example. Hashtag trigger warning. The problem with bestiality, the problem with human beings having sex with non-human animals, let's say it's a donkey, let's say it's a goat or a sheep, okay? The problem, from my perspective, in terms of the civilizational discourse about veganism, has nothing to do with the suffering of the animal. Nothing. If you can prove as a scientific fact, which is theoretically possible, if you can prove the animal enjoys it, I don't care. Like, if you can prove the animal doesn't suffer, now from a utilitarian perspective, they don't even require that the animal doesn't suffer. They just require that the animal suffers less than the human enjoys it. Utilitarianism is built on what's called the pleasure-pain calculus, the idea that you can subtract the pain from the pleasure. That's why they get into so many problems with the ethics of rape, right? So this is a standard question within utilitarianism. If you have a corrupt dentist, there's a dentist and he gives his patients drugs that make them fall asleep, etc., and then he rapes the patient while they're asleep, but the patient doesn't experience any suffering. What's the net calculus for pleasure versus pain, right? So obviously, this is for utilitarians, this is a fundamental problem. For me, it's not a problem at all. This is laughable. It just shows what's ludicrous and wrong with utilitarianism. Okay. From a utilitarian perspective, and from the old vegan perspective, from the perspective in veganism that predominated before the publication of my hit book, Future Evolution. I'm sorry, but not to be too egocentric, I regard the publication of my book as the end of one epoch and the beginning of another. The year zero. Now we're into the year one. Last year was the year zero. I hope you noticed. Okay, from the old vegan perspective, what I could call the pseudo-vegan perspective, frankly, the fake vegan perspective. Okay, the question was, does the animal suffer? And the question was not, is this something a civilized human being would do? Is this something unfit for a civilized human being to do? Now, I am asserting, in my generation, in my culture now, I have an idea about the difference between civilization and barbarism. And my idea is right and yours is wrong. Okay? That's what all of us are doing. And that's not just what you do in politics. It's not just what you do in philosophy. It's what you do as a creative artist. It's what you do as a painter, as a musician, as a comedian. All the time, you're asserting, even aesthetically, this is how a human being ought to live, even in fashion, even your style of dress. And especially, this is a sort of battle, a long-term war of attrition that exists within your family. It exists in the kitchen. It exists around the dining room table, right? And whatever. It exists in the living room. You sit down to watch TV with your family. Ask you this, straight up. Have you ever gone over to your father's place as an adult, over the age of 18. You go to visit your father at your dad's. Oh, hey, dad. Hey, whatever. And he's like, oh, hey, let's sit and watch hardcore porn while we talk. And he puts on Hustler, barely 18, incest, kink porn, you name it. He puts on the hardest of hardcore porn. Let your imagination run wild. He puts on college girls sleeping with their professors porn. Doesn't matter. And you're what? So you can think of different. What is this just normal for you? You sit down and sit with your dad and watch porn. Now look, every single one of you knows your father watches porn. I'm not saying all the time. I'm not saying every day. Every single one of you has a father who watches porn. And if your father is deceased, then in the past tense, he watched porn, at least occasionally. Every single one of you. Why? Why doesn't he watch porn in front of you? Why doesn't he watch porn with you? There's no suffering. There's no harm. From a utilitarian perspective, the pleasure-pain calculus, why should he sit and watch football on TV in front of you? Why should he sit and watch the news in front of you when he could be watching hardcore porn? There is no harm. There's no suffering, right? It is a question of civilization. Some of those questions are easy to answer. Some of them are hard, okay? You know, a civilized person does not have pornographic posters on his wall in his office. You could in any business imaginable. It's your office. You can decorate it any way you want to. Some people have posters of Jesus on the cross. Some people have a poster of kittens playing with a ball of yarn. Sorry, just offices I've been in. You see all kinds of crap, you know. A poster of the pyramids in Egypt. Why not? Why not hardcore porn posters on your wall? Okay. We are constantly, like implicitly and aesthetically, asserting what it means to be civilized. Okay? Not even moral. Civilized. Not what it means to be good. Not what it means to be excellent. Not what it means to be exemplary. Not what it means to be a political leader. Not what it means to be a hero. Not what it means to be Batman. Not what it means to be the leader of a revolution. No. Just this distinction between civilized and uncivilized. We're articulating it all the time. We're demonstrating all the time. And we are fighting over it all the time. Okay? Let's say, hypothetically, I have two sons. I don't have any sons. Okay? And one of my sons is straight, and one of my sons is gay. Let's say the straight son is my older son. And you know what a pro-homosexual, pro-gay kind of person I am. I completely love and support both of my sons. I treat them both equally, or I maybe even extra considerate to my gay son because I understand the struggles he's going through. So the older son, straight son, when he's in high school, he has a crush on a particular bikini model. Let's shout out Stefania Ferrario, whatever. There's some sex symbol of his day. Who's Kanye West's current wife? She also has an Italian name, I forget. Whatever. Either Kanye West's current wife or one of his ex-wives or ex-girlfriends. Whatever. There's someone he particularly is turned on by and he idealizes. And he puts a poster of this woman, not naked, in a tight, wet bikini or whatever, an erotic picture, inside his locker at school. And when he goes to school and he changes or gets ready for gym or whatever, you know, he opens his locker and all the other guys knowing, oh yeah, he's, again, I don't think it's a big deal, but whatever. And other guys at the school, they instead have other Hollywood actresses or whatever, And then 2 years later, my gay son does it, but it's a poster of a gay man, someone he considers sexy. And I say, don't do this to yourself. Don't open yourself up to ridicule and censure and blame this way at high school. This is a hypothetical example. I'm not saying I would do this. I'm not saying I should do this. What is the civilized thing to do? Now, my gay son says to me, hey, look, when my big brother did this with a naked woman, You didn't have a problem with it. You were fine with it. You were cool with it. Maybe even laughed and smiled at it or something. I do it with the naked man. All of a sudden, it's a big deal. It's a problem. What's up with that, bro? Okay. Again, there's no suffering involved. No one's hurt. No one's, you know what I mean? In terms of the pleasure-pain calculus, okay, this is a question of what is suitable for a civilized person in society. And it's not that easy to answer. If you're a medical doctor, you probably should not have posters up on the wall showing the kind of chicks you find hot or sexy. And if you're a gay medical doctor, you shouldn't have posters up of men. Why? There's no reason. It doesn't harm your patients. Doesn't make you a bad doctor. Doesn't make you incompetent. You got to think about these things. They're built into the fabric and aesthetics of our society. So my point is this. Okay, my leg fell asleep. I've already been to the gym twice. I'm going to go back a third time. This is, in case you haven't noticed, this is gradually morphing into a hashtag fit over 50 channel. I'm just not over 50 years old yet. I'm 45. But yes, I am now finally getting back in shape after struggling with coronavirus for a long time. So you can see the subtle changes that can move on. I'm going to get back to doing 200 push-ups a day, maybe 300 push-ups. Bench pressing, who knows, 250 pounds. We'll see what I get back to. But I'm just getting started. Anyway, that's why my leg fell asleep there. Sorry for the digression. Hashtag fit over 50. All right. Okay. Look, European civilization is uniquely guilt-ridden about civilization discourse, civilizing mission discourse, because we are guilty of genocide. We are guilty of slavery on a globe-spanning scale. This is associated with unspeakable evils in the history of the Christian faith. Also, separately, the Muslim faith, just worth mentioning. Whether or not anyone in Saudi Arabia is guilt-ridden about this is another question. Whether or not anyone in Turkey is guilt-ridden about this is another question. Okay? But Europeans today feel guilty. There are no more Tasmanians in Tasmania. There is not a single person who can speak the Manhattan language on Manhattan Island. I believe all of the Manhattan Indians are also extinct and gone without a trace. Okay, the indigenous people in most of these places, even where the name remains on the map, they are gone. All right, it is not for trivial reasons that this has been a taboo subject. But with all those taboos having been noted, I am saying that we need to embrace a human-centric civilizational discourse as being very centrally and fundamentally what the vegan movement is about. It's not about animal rights. It's not. Animal rights is a discredited, deeply incoherent, self-contradictory discourse or ideology. Very briefly, an elephant should live in the forest. Ideally, it has no contact with human beings, or human beings look at it through binoculars. An elephant should not be enslaved. An elephant should not entertain children in the circus, right? An elephant should not be made into a human toy or plaything. They should not be domesticated and made into laborers on farms, right? That's less common now, but it still exists. Where I was living in town, it still exists. But the work done by a tractor historically was done by an elephant. Okay, they were, yes, yeah, through the mountains, not on flat land, but yes, Melissa mentions transportation. Yes, when going over mountains, elephants were used for transportation, but on flat areas, it was really war. They were used as a tank. What do you want to say? But they were used in battle to devastating effect. Okay, so as a vegan, we oppose all of that. Okay. When an elephant leaves the national park, when an elephant crosses the dotted line between the protected area where nobody is allowed to hunt them and nobody is allowed to kill them and comes into the city, all of a sudden they have no rights at all. Okay? And when an elephant goes on a rampage in the city, the only question is, are we going to kill the elephant Or can we manage to tranquilize it or trap it before, like, airlifting it? It's very hard to move an elephant. You can get it onto the back of a truck. It is not easy. Are we going to kill it, or are we going to tranquilize it, trap it, chain it up, and then send it back to some other forest, remove it somewhere that's outside of the realm of human civilization? That is the only question. Okay? Bears. I live in Canada. When bears are in the forest, this is the situation. When they cross the dotted line, when they come into your backyard, when they come into your house, when they come into your garage, when they crawl in through the window and go down to your basement because they can smell garbage there, or they can smell food you have stored there. Okay, and now all of a sudden you are in the basement with the bear. The only question is if the bear is going to be killed or if it's possible to tranquilize it and have it removed. That is it. Those are all the options we have. Okay, and it's not a minor footnote that we kill rats, mice, gophers, seagulls, birds. That the most vegan airport in the world has to kill seagulls forever so that it's safe for airplanes to land. Not just seagulls. It could be falcons. It could be other kinds of birds that are nearby the airport. Okay, it is not a minor footnote that we have to kill gophers, squirrels, this kind of animal. I'm thinking of Richardson's ground squirrel specifically, in order to grow wheat. It's not. It's not an exception to the rule. It is the rule. Okay? We don't believe in animal rights. What we believe in is a notion of what it means to be civilized. That is what we as individuals and as a movement have to fight for.